it is time for a chat with Pat.
Sure is.
Yes, and it is Thursday, so that means Joan Watson is with us, and she is the associate editor of the Integrated Catholic Life. You can find that on the internet, and she writes a weekly article called Between Sundays. But we're kind of doing a series on her new book called Opening the Holy Door. So welcome, Joni. How you doing today?
Hi, I'm great, Pat. How are you?
I am just fine. Can you believe we're over halfway through the summer? It's like amazing.
No.
I'm sure you're getting
Halfway
some
through
vacation.
the Holy
Right?
Year.
That's true. That's true. See, you're so much better than me, Joni. I talk about summer, you talk about the Holy Year. So let's jump back into the panels of the Holy Door. If I'm not mistaken, we are talking about the panel on Christ's baptism today, correct?
That is the next one. Yes. Yeah.
So
it's a great panel because it depicts a story I think we're all very familiar with in the baptism of Jesus by John.
And I must admit, Joni, when I looked at this panel in your book, before obviously I read the chapter associated with it, and I'm staring at it thinking, who's this other guy? Because there are three people in this panel. I was only expecting John the Baptist and Christ. So explain this panel to us a little bit.
Yeah, so in the panel you see that very familiar depiction of Christ going into the waters and John baptizing him, and just that interesting humility, right? Christ is kind of, I mean, it's this act of humility, right? John says, like, what are you doing? Like, why? I'm not, he knows who Jesus is. And he's like, why are you coming to me? And Christ says, thus it is to fulfill all righteousness, right? This is the plan of God. But there is this third person, and it's not a person, it's actually an angel. And that angel is holding a garment. And I do think it's an interesting addition that we don't usually see. The beautiful thing about these panels on this holy door at St. Peter's, this holy door that's only open during the Jubilee years, but you can see the outside of it anytime, when you can actually see it better when it's closed, not during Jubilee years. The interesting thing about these panels is that they're such familiar scenes, but yet there's usually this little addition of something else to kind of prick your thoughts. And that's one of the reasons this book came. I decided to write this book because I thought these panels give us such an opportunity to enter into these scenes. So that other figure is an angel holding a white garment. And it's to remind us of our baptismal garment that we received at baptism, whether we were baptized as an infant or baptized as an adult. We received this white garment as a sign, as a symbol of what really happened in that efficacious sacrament, where we were made clean. We were washed in the waters of baptism, and we received that white garment. So for me, it's a reminder that what Christ did there with John is an invitation for me, and I participate in that baptism when I'm baptized and receive that white garment. For me, when I was about a month old.
Right. So tell me, Joni, because there is also something growing up behind the angel. What is that, and what does it mean, or what could it mean?
Yeah, is that the palm? So I'm actually I don't
like a
have the book in
palm.
front of me.
Oh, that's okay. It's a palm.
Is that the palm tree?
Yeah, it looks like a palm tree to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
what
what
the
is?
palm tree is traditionally a sign of victory, and it's traditionally a sign of winning. I mean, you think of even the Olympic athletes receiving the palms of victory, receiving the crown of palms. And so in ancient Christian art, especially in the mosaics that we see in like Roman basilicas, palm trees are there, or palm branches are there, to remind us that the real victory that is won is heaven. And that's what we're kind of looking at when we're looking at these different panels on the Holy Door, that we're making our way on this pilgrimage towards heaven, and that Christ opens the gates of heaven through, for us, first, baptism. Like, baptism is our entry point into having that hope of salvation. He didn't just come 2,000 years ago and do all this stuff and leave. He gave us an entry point that we can participate in this hope. We can participate in this mercy. And so that palm tree is a reminder to us that we are called to that victory. And what's that ultimate victory but heaven? And that's the gateway is baptism and is in the sacrament.
Well, Joni, you also mentioned in the opening paragraph to this whole chapter on this panel you say that Christ came to open the garden back up and back up to us, and that just doesn't start after we die. If we're willing to follow him, the garden living starts now. So tell us, how do you kind of see that in your estimation of how do we live in the garden right now? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think sometimes we just act like heaven is far away, right? Light years away in some distant galaxy, and we're going to get beamed up there at some point. But Christ comes in his public ministry and says the kingdom of heaven is here. And so, it's not here in its fullness, and it's not going to be here in its fullness, but we are called to live in that heavenly mystery here and now on earth. And I think we do that most beautifully in the sacraments, right? The sacraments are that taste of heaven. And so we're baptized, and because we're baptized as sons and daughters of God, we're able to participate in that marriage feast, that heavenly banquet that comes to us at the Mass, right? And so at the Mass, we're participating in heaven. And how often we as Catholics forget that, right? We act like Mass is just that Sunday obligation, but that we as Catholics are participating in the liturgy that's taking place in heaven. And so I think we need to walk around with smiles on our faces more, because we act like we're just in the Vale of Tears, and we're in the Vale of Tears, but we're also participating in the heavenly banquet.
Yeah. And I think it's great, too, and you mentioned it in your questions on this chapter, that Pope Francis really encouraged all of us to celebrate our baptismal dates. And again, I don't even know the date I was baptized. I'd have to look that up. But I notice it with my great nieces and nephews. Their parents actually do celebrate their baptismal day with them, and usually built around possibly the feast of their saint, if it's close to their baptismal date. Some of them actually picked names for their children near the due date of their due date, a saint's name. And I thought these are just great ways to get us back in touch with what's really important.
Yeah, baptism changed our life, right? We don't do that enough. Baptism changed your life and your eternal life forever, and we should celebrate that, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Joni, thank you so much for being with us today. Joan Watson was our guest, Associate Editor of the Integrated Catholic Life Online. Writes article between the Sundays. She's a speaker. She does all kinds of things. So check her out, and she's with us every Thursday. Have a good weekend, Joni.
God bless. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
so there
great
you
conversation.
go.
And I did. I never knew my baptismal date myself, but I did. I did track it down.
Did you?
Yeah,
I've got to track mine down.
Yeah,